So it's time for a spring update on my native plant gardens. This will be a quick tour. It is May 21st, 2020, and most of the spring ephemerals are almost done at this point. But as you can see, my shade garden is doing quite lushly with ostrich ferns primarily, and over there you can see some white trilliums. The red trilliums are hidden from this angle, and the yellow is wood poppy. And over here we have wonderful Solomon seal with their pretty little dangling flowers. I've got a few of those coming up through here, and this wonderful crop of Jack in the Pulpits. Many things I have planted in this garden. Jack in the Pulpits are not one of them. Those are all volunteers, and they're all throughout the garden. Wonderful surprise. We've got some wild ginger down in here, and a little fern at the edge of the garden that has spread. Those are bulblet ferns, and they reproduce by generating tiny little fernlets, I'll call them, along the edges of the leaves that fall off and start another fern. Quite a lovely, delicate fern. Hidden down in amongst a great crop of bloodroot there, we can see some dicentra. It's either squirrel corn or Dutchman's breeches, I'm not sure which. It did not flower this year, to confirm, so I'm not sure. And back in here we see another Solomon seal, but this one is just a false Solomon seal with a little flower cluster forming at the very tip there, as opposed to along the underside of the stem. In the back corner here, behind all of these, we can see my mayapple coming up through here. It had a tough time this year because we had some very late frosts and a lot of snow after they were up. They survived, but they don't look as good as they have in previous years. And down growing in amongst it is zigzag goldenrod, which gives me some nice yellow color in the late fall. Oh, and as I can see from here, if we look underneath, we can see the flower bud forming on this, or actually the fruit forming on this mayapple where there had been a blossom. So the cool thing about mayapple is they have this Y-shaped branching pattern, and a solitary blossom forms in the Y, and if it gets pollinated, we get a small mayapple. So this is the back corner of what I consider my woodland garden. We can see over here some more zigzag goldenrod in that patch, and here is white trillium. As it matures, they tend to turn pink like this. This was Trillium grandiflorum, and it has a large white flower on it. Here are the last of the blossoms on my red trilliums as they hang underneath the leaves, and they've been out for quite a while. I'm surprised there's still blossoms there. This little patch in here, I planted a number of spring ephemerals last year, but I think I put too much leaf mulch on it this winter, and this spring, with the winds blowing a lot of that leaf mulch away, I discovered there was very little coming up. I'm hoping that the roots will have survived, and maybe next year we'll see something come back. My wild leeks, I have where the red flag is. I planted it so I wouldn't lose track of them and put something else there. That flag can now come out, and here with some bloodroot amongst it is some more wild leeks, and I'm planning to let that crop spread before I try harvesting it. Over on this side of this garden we have more woodland poppy, and up here we have Virginia waterleaf, which is starting to form buds, and these will have little shoots of pretty pale mauve to white flowers that grow in clusters at the top of it, and they get the name Virginia waterleaf because the young growth tends to have what looks like water stains on the leaves. On this side of this garden we have a lot of things trying to happen here. This is a spice bush that doesn't really like it here, although it was loaded with flowers this spring. This bush has never really gotten very big. It's probably about 4 feet tall and 8 feet across, and its compatriot is at the back of the garden, and you can see it right in through there. It's at least 15 feet tall and 20 feet across, and it's the same age as this one. The difference, I think, is in the moisture levels in the soil up here versus down there. Underneath it I've got some running strawberry bush, and in front I have a sweet white violet, and over here I have some newly planted spring beauties that I salvaged from the tractor trail going through a friend's bush where it would have been driven over many times, so I didn't feel too guilty about bringing that one home with me. Over here in this part of the garden, this is a big patch of wood chips here. Wood mulch is where I dug out a cherry tree that was volunteer growing underneath the maple and transplanted it last fall. So this place is fairly open for expansion now. I had a yellow violet growing here beside the rock that I planted last spring, but it did not make it through the winter apparently, because there's no sign of it. Over here I have some blue cohosh and some white baneberry there, and in the back I have red baneberry and more blue cohosh and more ostrich ferns. These shrubs are left over from when I wasn't planting natives, and they will be finding a home somewhere soon. I have a friend interested in taking them. Quite lovely lime green pagoda dogwood, but not the best place for it here, so it will be leaving. And yesterday I planted in this part of the garden some white wood asters, and we'll see if they make it through to the fall. And that is a tour of the woodland garden for this morning. This is a garden that gets very little maintenance and gets ignored most of the time because of the leaf mulch that just keeps the weeds under control for me. It is in the shade of 2 exceptionally large sugar maple trees that provide dense shade here all summer long. So that is the shade garden spring of 2020.